Hi everybody, Andrew Cuneo here with a new YouTube video. Today I'm going to start diving back into Historic, the next Arena Open that's coming up in about 2 weeks is going to be in Historic, so I'm going to start focusing on that a little bit more. I wanted to go over this blue-white control deck that's 80 card deck because it's using Yorion. This is the list that Shuhei Nakamura went undefeated in Historic with at the most recent set championship. So people asked me about this when I did a video where I looked at the various blue-white control archetypes that were played in the set championship and tried to compare how the lists were built. And I omitted this one because it was a Yorion deck, so it's very hard to compare because obviously there's just more of everything. It's 20 more cards. But I did want to try this one out and see what, do you get any special synergies for playing with the Yorion? Does it feel like it's a big cost to go up to 80 cards? And so if we look at this deck, the answer is there's a couple of extra synergies, and probably you're not realistically playing a particularly big cost. So looking at the way the deck's built, it's mostly the usual suspects for blue-white control. The one card that you're adding to your deck because you're playing Yorion is Omen of the Sea. That's just a great card with Yorion. If you played in the standard where Yorion was kind of a staple of that standard, it was always played before Omen of the Seas, and that's been translated into this Historic deck. A couple other things that stand out about this list. One is there's only 3 copies of March of Otherworldly Light, and most of the 60-card lists we're looking at, we're playing 4 copies. I kind of tend to think that this is a card you'd want to play 4 copies of, especially in an 80-card deck, but I'm just going to leave it this way for the video, and we'll see if we get any experiences that inform it one way or the other. 4 copies of Portable Hole, and the sweepers are 3 4-mana Wraths and 2 Farewells, no Divine Purges. I'm kind of a fan of that. If you watched the last video, I basically came to the conclusion that I don't really think Divine Purge is worth playing when you can just get most of the same effect from just sort of playing a mix of Portable Holes, 4-mana sweepers, and Farewells. And you don't have the experience of having Divine Purges in your deck in matchups where they're just really not very good at that point. One thing I did want to try is since the set championship, there's been 1 new installment of alchemy cards. And there's this card, Fragment Reality. Exile a non-token artifact, creature, or enchantment. Its controller puts a random creature card with lesser mana value from their library onto the battlefield tapped. I think that this card is kind of similar to Portable Hole in that it's a 1-mana removal spell. Rather than having the drawback of only hitting your opponent's cheap permanents, this has the drawback that really you only want to play it on your opponent's cheap permanents, but you can choose to play it on anything. And, they're going to get a little bit of value, but you're going to be able to get whatever you want. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to try splitting the difference and hopefully start to collect some experience with Fragment Reality versus Portable Hole to maybe inform decisions going forward. Another thing that's a little bit stand out about this deck is there's 4 copies of the Wandering Emperor, which some of the blue-white lists we looked at had a full 4 in the 60-card deck. Some only had 1 or 2 of. One interesting thing is there is a minor synergy between the Wandering Emperor and Yorion. The turn you play your Yorion, if you have a Wandering Emperor in play, you could activate it beforehand, flicker it with your Yorion, and then it would come back into play in your end step, and then you could activate it again, so you would sort of get to double activate your Wandering Emperor the turn you play a Yorion. I've tried that in 1 match so far with this deck, and you need to put a stop at the beginning of your end step if you're going to be doing that. That's just one of those things you need to learn about how your deck's going to function in the arena stop system. But that's a cool synergy. Other things that stand out about this deck, there's only 3 Teferi Hero of Dominarias, which is another interesting number, given that this is an 80-card list. And I think that 3 was about the average for the 60-card lists, but it's interesting that this list doesn't even go up to 4, going to 80 cards. We've got 2 Rest in Pieces in the main deck. Pretty much everyone was playing at least 1 in their 60-card decks. So when you go up to 80 cards, you want to draw it a little bit more. That's kind of interesting. And then looking at the lands, you can the lands are actually, I think, pretty interesting for an 80 card list. So there's only one Castle Vantress even in an 80 card list. I find that pretty interesting, and I agree with it. There's no Castle Ardenvale. There's no Field of Ruin. There's just only blue and white lands, which is another thing that's kind of interesting. If you look at the lands, there's kind of 4 of all of the good dual lands: the Deserted Beach, Glacial Fortress, Hallowed Fountain, the Pathway, and the Irrigated Farmland. And then we do get to one of the costs of playing an 80 card deck. In order to get good enough mana to support Archmage's Charm in a deck that also has the Wandering Emperor, you've kind of run out of really good dual lands, and we're now playing the Raugrin Triome, which the Raugrin Triome is essentially the same card as Irrigated Farmland, but when you go to cycle it, it's going to cost 1 extra. So it's a slightly worse Irrigated Farmland. I think people pretty much always played 4 Irrigated Farmlands in blue-white. So it's a downgrade. It's not that huge of a downgrade, but you're not excited about it, I would say. Other than that, it's kind of the lands you would expect. Maybe a little bit less value in the lands than some people might be used to, even in a 60 card deck. But I'm kind of a fan of it. I think that most of the time in Historic, you don't really, like, if you're in a spot where you're activating Castle Vantress, you're either really far behind and your hand is just awful, or you're really far ahead and you're probably going to win anyway. I don't think Castle Vantress actually plays very well in the kind of narrower band of games where the game's actually competitive, which is why I'm not really a big fan of playing multiple copies of it. Looking at the sideboard, so one slot is taken up by the Yorion, and that means we're not playing the, whatever the name of the 3/2 companion is that some people play. Let's look that up. I blanked on the name. Kahira. Some 60 card lists play Kahira. That's obviously not an option if you're going to be playing with Yorion. Yorion is certainly a better card if you're willing to meet the deck building requirement. Then we can go up to the full 4 Rest in Pieces. This is something that I'm going to play this list like this today to see how it feels, but I'm kind of not wild about this. I think that beyond the 3rd Rest in Peace, you're probably better off just playing some Soul Guide Lanterns. But we've got the full 4 here. We can go up to the full 4 Mystical Disputes and the full 4 Dovin's Vetoes. Those are cards that are certainly great, and it's nice to have access to full 4 copies. There's also 4 Malevolent Hermits. So this is a sideboard that is basically saying, my main deck has a lot of cards I need to take out if I'm going to be playing a blue-white mirror. And so it's providing you with a lot of cards to board in. If you look at the main deck, say we were playing a blue-white mirror, we'd certainly want to board out 2 Farewells, 2 Wraths, a Day of Judgment. So that's 5 cards. We certainly would want to board out our 2 Rest in Pieces. We're up to 7 cards. We would want to board out all of our portable Whole Fragment Reality type cards. So that's 11, and you'd probably want to trim on March of Otherworldly Lights as well. So you could potentially board out up to like 14 cards, maybe even the Soul Guide Lantern. Soul Guide Lantern isn't a straight up blank, because every once in a while you pick off a Memory Deluge, and it really doesn't cost you very much to just have it in your deck. But we've got, you know, certainly we're above 10 cards we would want to be boarding out. And if you look at the sideboard, we're boarding in 5 counters, 4 Malevolent Hermits, so we're at 9 there. And then you've got also a Nezahal, which is a card that I really do not like very much, but it's maybe the next best thing that you can be boarding in. So I'll play with the Nezahal. Probably I'm not going to like the Nezahal, and I would maybe look to play a Commence the Endgame. But we'll just leave it as Nezahal for today. Sideboard also has some Baneslayer Angels. This is the it was one of the popular plans at the set championship, was basically try to stick a Rest in Peace against Phoenix decks, and then once you've done that, just get a Baneslayer Angel out, and it's going to be something that your opponent can't kill with Unholy Heat, and you'll be able to ride it to victory. So that's certainly a plan. I think that the data from the set championships kind of demonstrated that that is not a plan where you should be It's not a plan that's good enough to make you a favorite in the matchup. It might be the best plan that is available to blue-white, though. One other thing I wanted to point out about Baneslayer Angel is to a lot of people, it's a card that is basically interchangeable with Lyra, because the two cards do the same thing in most situations. But you want your first copy to be a Baneslayer Angel, for sure, because of the last line, Protection from Dragons. The Phoenix deck, which is where you're planning to board this in, has Sprite Dragon. Being able to get protection from Sprite Dragon actually matters every once in a while in games. So you certainly want your first copy to be a Baneslayer Angel. Your second copy, you can consider making a Lyra because of this other angels you control get +1/+1 and have lifelink. So in theory, if you have a Baneslayer Angel and a Lyra in play, your Lyra is buffing your Baneslayer Angel. Now, Baneslayer Angel is not legendary, so you could play, you could play just 4 copies of it if you wanted to have 4 copies of this. Lyra is legendary, so I would say you should never put multiple Lyras in your sideboard unless you have gotten to the point where you've maxed out on Baneslayer Angels. And what Shui has done is said, basically, this, I might have Lyra and Baneslayer Angel in play scenario is just, it doesn't matter. The important thing is having protection from dragons. So if you have one of these in play, it's always going to be a Baneslayer Angel. You're always going to have protection from Sprite Dragon. I'm inclined to agree with this. I think that the idea that you're going to have one of each in play is just kind of silly. You would almost definitely win the game where you had 2 Baneslayer Angels in play. You don't really need this extra +1/+1 to get to 11 power instead of 10 combined power. So just play the 2 Baneslayer Angels, and then all the games where you only draw 1, it's always going to be a Baneslayer Angel. You're always going to have protection from Sprite Dragon. That's the thing that matters the most. So that's the important thing, I think, when thinking about how to execute this particular sideboard plan. I would just play all Baneslayer Angels, which is what was done in this original deck list. With that, I think that pretty much covers it. It's really, this is not all that different from a 60-card version of blue-white, so really the question is, do you get enough benefit from the Yorion to be worth the slight additional inconsistencies? And I think the answer might be yes. Certainly Yorion, just as if you get to the point where you can get it into play in Historic, people aren't playing a ton of things that interact with kind of just a big 4/5 flying creature. It's going to be a relevant body in all the games where you can afford to cast it. The real issue is going to be, can you get to the point where you actually get to cast it? So that's what we're going to have to find out. And with that, let's jump into some of the games. I think this whole googly eye thing would have been a lot cooler if the googly eyes actually moved. So they've led on a relic. This could actually still be a variety of decks. It could be a blue-white control deck. It could be a blue-white artifact deck. It's probably not a blue-white auras deck because there's no Luris, and also a blue-white auras deck would probably not bother to play a Relic of Progenitus. This appears to be a blue-white artifact deck. So this deck plays Metallic Rebuke. I'm going to go ahead and get the Shadow Spear off of the board because it means that the opponent's not going to be able to Metallic Rebuke my Narset. Having a Narset in play is pretty nice in this matchup because one of their best cards is Thought Monitor, and Narset goes a long way to making Thought Monitor not a very good card.
Mind and body should move in unison, like wind and wave. Hone your prowess.
Do I want a second March or do I want a Portable Hole? I think I want the second March. One of the cards I'm worried that might get cast next turn is a Nettle Cyst. I don't think that this list I'm playing actually can utilize the graveyard really at all. There's no Commit Memory. There's no Search for Azcanta. Interesting, the Patchwork Automaton. I don't know that I would have guessed that was a card that would show up in this list.
Meditate and prepare.
I wonder, is that better or worse than the, I forget the name of it. It's 1 and a white, and it finds you an artifact, but it can only grow 1 a turn and doesn't have ward. It's an interesting question. I guess I'm just going to pass. I really think that they have Wandering Rebuke, or Metallic Rebuke. So I don't want to jam the Wandering Emperor on my turn. I probably don't even want to play it when they attack, because I don't really want it to get Metallic Rebuked. I think instead I'm just going to play the Omen of the Sea and give myself access to Mystical Dispute.
You are a mighty warrior. I can see.
I certainly want to land. Should I settle for a tapped land, or should I get a little bit greedier? Probably fine to settle for a tap land. I don't think I need to draw 2 tap lands. Now I do have the option of playing the Wandering Emperor. I think I'm just going to do that. I'm going to play the Wandering Emperor right now. I think they're going to Metallic Rebuke it. I'm going to dispute their Metallic Rebuke. And then I'll just make a 2/2. And we'll go from there. It's possible that my 2/2 will just be chumping the Patchwork Automaton. It's possible the 2/2 will just get hit by a Portable Hole. But that's just a scenario where I'm going to have to fight through this Metallic Rebuke at some point, and I think that by choosing to have it happen at a point where I'm just trading my dispute for the rebuke, that's probably the least painful way I've got given this hand to fight through. All right, they've got Sai. So one of the reasons I really wanted to get through the Metallic Rebuke is I want to get to a point where I'm going to be casting this Farewell. So hopefully that I've gotten through their 1 Metallic Rebuke, and when I cast the Farewell, they won't have a second one. Obviously, they could have a second one. So I don't want to play in such a way that I fall so far behind that I'm in a spot where I just have to have Metallic Rebuke, or I have to have Farewell Resolve and have them not have Metallic Rebuke. So I don't want to let myself just fall wildly behind on board, but I should be able to avoid that. I'm going to go ahead and double block here. Is it time to get Yorion back in my hand? Now the easy thing is I'm going to plus there. I'm also going to play a Narset.
I know 88 ways to defeat you. I have just the trick for this.
I wanted Dovin's Veto, which would guarantee, well, with 1 more land would guarantee me that the Farewell's going to resolve. I think I'm just going to take a Memory Deluge. And this kind of gives me, well, it'll probably find me a land, 1 other good card would be my guess, and it gives me something that's going to wind up in my graveyard, which maybe gives me a little bit more value down the road. Although they do have a relic in play, so it's not clear that it's going to not just get relicked away. Here we see the Thought Monitor shutting down the Narset. I think the opponent didn't realize that was going to happen, maybe. There's not really a very good reason to have played the Thought Monitor before combat.
Just wait a moment.
They might counter this with Metallic Rebuke if they have it, just because they might believe that the Metallic Rebuke's not going to do anything as the game goes on. They still can cast another Metallic Rebuke. It'd be their third copy in 15 cards. It's not that likely they have it. So I would be exiling all artifacts, certainly. I guess I want to exile all creatures because I think the Thopterst is worth more than the 3/3 Samurai. Let's go ahead and cast this and see if it resolves. Or I could minus the Narset and maybe hit either Mystical Dispute to start. I'm going to minus this anyway this turn, so let's do that to start.
We still have much to learn. Keep an open mind.
If I had one more land, I definitely would have taken the Dovin's Veto there. And there's no reason to exile my Omen of the Sea or the graveyards because I have the Deluge. Assuming this resolves, they're going to activate the Relic of Progenitus, so the graveyards will be exiled anyway. And we can make another guy.
Keep watch for intruders.
I'm pretty comfortably ahead now. I'll have the option as the game plays out of either trying to, you know, just run this Wandering Emperor down and then get this other one into play, or just trying to keep this one in play and keeping the other Wandering Emperor as a backup in case they're able to kill the first one. Looks like I'm going to have a lot to do with my mana anyway, so I'll probably not want to prioritize recasting this Wandering Emperor. Here I'll go ahead and make this Yorion play, where I've set a stop in my instep. I'm going to flicker both of these. I think I might not have needed the stop just because I had the Omen of the Sea in play, which is going to give me priority anyway. If you don't have the Omen of the Sea, you definitely need to stop, has been my experience. All right, sideboarding. Not a whole lot that is particularly interesting here. Baneslayer Angel's probably going to be a good card. I guess Mystical Dispute is also pretty good. I don't think I want Dovin's Veto. I don't want the Lantern. I certainly don't want Rest in Peace. This looks pretty reasonable. I don't know that I wouldn't say I necessarily really want all of these Mystical Disputes. I think some of them are fine. And I have to have something, so seems fine. This is an annoying card against my deck. Probably not even worth playing the Omen of the Sea. I'm going to get one card. They're going to get two. That's the name of this is the name of the card I couldn't think of last game. So I'll probably just not cast Omen of the Sea and hope that I can eat one of these Sentinels with the Shark Typhoon next turn, or just make my land drops and not lose too much life. This is a really rough start to a game, though, for sure. Donut is, I suppose, wisely playing around Shark Typhoon, but it does mean that they're not pressuring my life total that much, so I should get time to just make my land drops. And, you know, as long as I don't fall too far behind, I can potentially catch up with this Farewell, or I can also just play a Baneslayer Angel and try to just, you know, gum up the game. Eventually the Smiths will outscale the Baneslayer Angel. So I'm just going to play this tapped. Certainly not going to attack. It's a lot of ingenious Smiths. And one of them bricked. Nice. I needed a few things to start going my way. I like that they're not casting the Nettle Cyst this turn. Makes me feel like there might be a little bit of hope for this game yet. So here I have the option of playing the Omen of the Sea, and we would both be getting a card. I'm going to go ahead and do that, because I want to make sure that I'm hitting my 6th land drop on turn 6. It does look like I'm probably going to go Baneslayer Angel. Maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. But either way, I'm going to be looking to... I'm going to want to have the ability to play the Farewell on turn 6 or 7 probably this game. So they're trying to dig to a Metallic Rebuke, it seems. I'm definitely just going to cast Farewell. They'll get 3 more cards, so it won't be that big of a blowout. Does this count as an artifact? Can I exile it with Farewell? Nice. So I am going to get to exile 2 of their lands. I'll gain 5 life before play Farewell. It'd be... In some ways, it would be nicer if I had a Day of Judgment or a Wrath of God here. So I could pay for the first 2 Sentinels. Getting their lands is kind of a nice consolation prize. Genius Smith number 4. And Esper Sentinel number 4. They basically only they've drawn like the same cards. They didn't play the Esper Sentinel. Interesting. If they played the Esper Sentinel, they would have had access to Metallic Rebuke. So it's possible what they have instead is Dovin's Veto. Let's just start on this Narset. See what they do. They do have Dovin's Veto. Okay. I'm going to continue to make land drops, and I think I'm going to just Aganjo this Ingenious Smith. The worst case here for me would be they cast a Thought Monitor. But I think I'm willing to live with that risk. Also, if they played a Thought Monitor, I think they would be completely tapped out because they have 2 artifacts, so it would cost 4. Either. And then I'd be getting to resolve Teferi, which... barring another Dovin's Veto, I'm getting to resolve this Teferi. Oh, that's not true. If they have Metallic Rebuke, they stop me as well, because I paid for the Asper Sentinel. They don't appear to have either of those cards, so...
Let's skip to the good part.
If I want to, I can Archmage's Charm this Esper Sentinel. I don't think that I care that much about it. If they move to equip the Shadow Spear on it, I think I will actually take it. And I'll do it before the equip resolves so that I can pay the 1 so they don't draw a card. Instead, they're going on the Ginger Brute. That's fine. I can just threaten to take the Ginger Brute, which they would sack it, but that would be fine. Maybe. Oh, they can't sack it because it was tapped. All right.
You know what? I'm not done.
This one's pretty over at this point. I think I even really want the Day of Judgment. There's certainly a lot of cards that are better than the Day of Judgment. Like a Wandering Emperor would be a lot better. A Memory Deluge would be a lot better. Archmage's Charm would have been a lot better. Even more copies of March of Otherworldly Light would be a lot better. Just going to do this now. It means I'll get to untap. I'll essentially profit 1 extra mana because of the Teferi untapping. It won't cost me quite as much to get the Sentinel off the board. Also, I felt like casting this card just because it's a new card. They might, I guess they could have Ornithopters in their deck, which they probably do not. Okay. Maybe should have gotten a little bit frisky with the Yorion, given that I can block with Hollow Storm Giants. They do have the Shadow Spear, so they might be able to gain some life back, and the Teferi is almost to the point where it's going to ultimate. So I don't need to be pressuring their life total. One thing about playing these Teferi decks, when you get in the spot where the Teferi is about to ultimate, you're basically almost guaranteed to win. So you should be thinking about what can I do to make, to just turn the almost guaranteed win into an actual win. And one of the things that you can do is think about, okay, so when the emblem goes off, can I give myself ways to have instant speed draw so that I just get, you know, the ability to exile whatever their scariest permanent is at instant speed. And so that's why I think it makes a lot of sense to wait one turn to cycle the farmland. I think they're kind of putting up a little bit of a fight. It's not going to be nearly enough, but it was about as good of a turn as they could hope to have.
To the good part.
I'll play defensive for one more turn, and then this one should be about wrapped up. Soaring, you get to see the benefits of having held off on the cycling for one turn. I'll be able to get this Nettle Cyst off the board. Guess I could have gained some life. Oh well, Ginger Brute. I'll let you down.
We need to move quickly.
I think I missed on-board lethal because I forgot I had a Hollow Storm Giants. I definitely did. I'm wishing I hadn't, because it's going to make me... I guess I'm going to be able to kill him next turn, probably through the Sai anyway. And I didn't really need to play this extra turn of garbage time. Ooh, the Wandering Emperor. Nice. I don't know if we really learned much about Fragment Reality as to whether or not it's better than Portable Hull this match. I think they both are just would have been excellent cards in this matchup. Perhaps Fragment Reality is a little bit better because the card you're really looking to hit is like an Esper Sentinel, and being able to do that at instant speed. It's pretty nice. In theory, it could have maybe come up that I really needed to kill a Sai, and the additional flexibility would have been good. It's certainly a much worse card against Ingenious Smith, though, because converting their Ingenious Smith into an Esper Sentinel is not something I'm really interested in. They're also a Yorion deck. That doesn't mean that they're playing blue-white control, though. Sometimes people play, like, kind of enchantment Yorion decks. One land on the play, not good enough. Opponent also mulled to 6. And they're playing some sort of Enchantress Yorion deck. I wish I had not put that Farewell on the bottom. I thought it was a pretty easy decision to put the Farewell on the bottom just because there's a reasonable chance that I'm playing a matchup where the Farewell has no effect on the game. Also, it's a 6-mana card when I only have 3 lands. Probably next turn I'm going to have to Portable Hole the Sithis. Ideally, I draw another white land. Hey, it's coming up me. So now if I want to, I can just use the Narset, and they don't have anything in play currently that would allow them to start drawing extra cards. This is certainly a card I need to counter. I think I'll counter it with my Dovin's Veto. Even though it's slightly mana inefficient, the Archmage's Charm is more flexible.
I won't forget I can hone your prowess.
Not only does Rest in Peace not do anything against their deck, it also is a card that's probably in their deck. So against an Enchantress type deck, what do I want? I definitely want my Dovin's Vetoes. Other than that, I mean, Malevolent Hermit would maybe be okay. It's certainly not great, but what do I have that's bad? Rest in Peace is really bad. Soulguide Lantern's pretty bad. I like the Portable Holes. I like the Farewells. The Wraths and the Day of Judgments are fine. I like all the Planeswalkers. Although the Wandering Emperor, it's not exciting here. I could, if I wanted to board something else in, I could definitely trim some of those. Mystical Dispute is also a card that's not great, because it's just 3 mana leak in this matchup. I think I like 3 mana leak more than I like Malevolent Hermit, though. I think I'm just going to go with this. One thing I have to bear in mind is they're definitely going to have Destiny Spinners in their deck, which makes it so you can't counter their enchantments anyway. So I don't want to go that hard on the counters. I do have 4 Dovin's Vetoes, but I'm going to have to keep the Destiny Spinner off the board as much as possible, which I've got 9 removal spells that can just target it, plus sweepers. That's something that's doable. See if I can get this Jwari Disruption to hit something. It worked. Now I'm going to hope to Mystical Dispute something. If the Mystical Dispute doesn't get cast here, I'll March of Otherworldly Light, the Naturalist, or maybe something else. Opponent didn't want to play anymore. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of initial look into playing a Yorion blue-white list. I don't know that I've made up my mind yet as to what's the best way to approach this deck. I've said in almost every one of these videos talking about blue-white in Historic, I think the question you have to ask is, how do I get the best matchup against Phoenix? And that should be how you build your deck. And I think the other thing you have to ask yourself is my Phoenix matchup going to be good enough that it's worth playing this archetype? And for me, at least at the last set championship, the answer was no. But I think if you could find an actual good configuration against Phoenix, I think this would be probably the best deck in Historic. I don't know that anyone's found that yet. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.